Hi everybody, and thank you for joining me today. So I finished the peahen's wings and tail that was in this pass, and I'm working on her body now. Yeah, at the very bottom of this pass there's a bit of the fence post that I think she's standing on, but yeah, it's mostly her abdomen that I'm working on. And yeah, it's a fairly long or large width across, like 8 columns or so. So I'm sort of doing part of it now, and then I'm gonna move the whole thing over, do another section, that sort of thing, because yeah, working on 14 count, my pieces get quite big, so yeah, that's, I suppose, one benefit of working on higher counts. There was someone who said they only need to move their frame, like they can put 4 pages worth into their piece before they have to move their frame because they're working on like 28 count, which is, yeah. So, although I suppose with you all, I would still have to remove it from the frame, since when I do my monthly update, I show you guys the whole thing out of the Q snap. That's always one of my favorites because yeah, you can really see the progress when you do that. So I'm thinking I might have the peahen completed, that is in this pass, by the end of this month. We'll see. Yeah, and next month I'll be working on the big pink flowers, and maybe a little further, because the flowers are, yeah, not very confetti heavy. They're quite large, and so they should go by pretty quick. They got lots of big blocks, so yeah, like I said, we will see. Yeah, I've got my crafting lamp on here, so I hope that this lighting is good, because it is, yeah, I have very little natural light today because we are dealing with wildfire smoke. Yeah, there was a wildfire that wasn't very far from our city, but fortunately they got it under control, so yeah, no need to evacuate or anything like that, which, yeah, you don't want. Yeah, but it threw up a lot of smoke in the air, and it's also supposed to rain today, so yeah, it would have been overcast anyway. So I actually am hoping it rains a bit, maybe clean some of that, yeah, some of that ash out of the air that's hanging around would be nice. So, all right, so yeah, the colors along the belly are kind of curving around like that because of the way she's standing. So I'm probably going to sort of work out a little bit like that, somewhat, and then, yeah, continue working my way up. That's just what I feel like doing. But we will see. I will probably cut it off sort of mid, because, yeah, there's a color that goes quite in a steep slope like that, and that's a little further than I like to reach with the arm I have on top of my work. So yeah, like I said, I'm probably going to cut it off about at this grid line here, fill in, and then move everything over and fill in a bit more. Yeah, so hoping that it won't be a bad wildfire season this year. We had that, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah, it was pretty nasty. The skies were orange almost sometimes. It was so bad. And I remember one year, I drove home from work, and it was so dark that all the street lights came on. Yeah, it was as if you were driving home at 10 at night and it was high noon. It was wild. Yeah. I said I take pictures, but I think my phone on my phone kind of like filters some of it out, because it can never seem to quite capture just how, yeah, just how thick the smoke is. Like, you can see it a bit, but yeah, it never seems to quite to quite really show exactly. I find that with when it's really heavy rain too. Yeah, you kind of can't see it. I guess maybe you need some specialized camera equipment or something. I don't know. I'm not into photography, so yeah, I don't know anything about that stuff. My sister and my cousin both are, like, as in shoot on film, develop it in your own darkroom kind of. Yeah, they got into that. Yeah, I guess that's going to be kind of a lost art, isn't it? Yeah, like, I don't think it's ever going away. I think it's like, you know, vinyl records never really went away, but yeah, it's definitely a lot less common. Yeah, and it was funny because somebody was asking about on TV. A youngster was saying, you know, what is the purpose of this red room that the characters go to? You know, I was like, oh wow, yeah, you guys have never heard of a dark room. Yeah. Yeah, I remember when we went on vacation, my dad was the one who had to carry the camera because it was so heavy. Yeah. And he even had the separate flash that charged and everything. And then when it took the picture, it would make this whiny wee sound. Yeah. Yeah, they said experiences from childhood that are, you know, as technology changes, they get lost. Yeah, like somebody said, sensory stuff from childhood. They said, remember when you used to turn off the computer screen and then all the dust was there and it was all staticky? You'd drag your finger through it. Yeah. It got all fuzzy. Yeah, that's not really a thing anymore. Okay. Yeah, or there was one somebody was saying when you were a kid and going on the computer was like this big deal because, yeah, there was one computer for the whole family and you needed your parents' permission to touch it. Not this everyone has a computer in their pocket kind of stuff, so. Pardon me. Yeah. So the smoke in the air is kind of irritating my throat a bit, so yeah. Unfortunately. Not much I can do about that. We have our house's system set up to recirculate the air inside rather than bring in new air from outside. But, of course, that's only can do so much. Some will still get in. Yeah, we are fortunate that there's not enough vegetation around us that we generally don't have to worry about the fires actually reaching us. It's just the smoke. So, yeah, I won't complain. Yeah, really the only thing I have to worry about where we live is tornadoes, but fortunately we don't see those very often either. But yeah, there's flooding, but our house is on a teeny bit of a hill and is just enough that we had some less fortunate people in town did get flooded, but yeah, we are, like, I wouldn't say it's a hill, but it is just enough of an incline that, yeah, the water drains away from our house and we have not had that problem. Fingers crossed. Yeah, we don't have to worry about earthquakes. We're too far from the fault lines, but yeah, wildfires is a concern. Yeah, my in-laws, when I first was dating my husband, his parents lived up in Hope, BC, and like that's right along one of the major fault lines. Yeah, so she was always worried. But yeah, they've been saying that has been building up to the big one since I was a kid, you know, over 40 years. I grew up on Vancouver Island in Nanaimo. We had earthquake drills all the time because they had been telling us sort of like any minute now it could go. And it's been building up for so long that it is expected to be a very big earthquake. But yeah, it still hasn't happened yet. So we're not like, say, in California where it shifts a little now and then and relieves some of the pressure. Yeah, we've had a couple of very small ones in my lifetime. but that's about it. There was one I remember, actually. I was sitting in the truck when my husband, he was my fiance then, but he went to go get something from his place, and it was sort of like downstairs in a basement. And he said as he's walking down, he kind of falls against the walls, like, what the? And then kind of gets up and kind of stumbles towards the other ones, like, what the heck? Do I not know how to walk? It was so mild, he didn't realize that it wasn't his fault. It was the ground was moving, right? And I remember I was waiting out in the truck, and I kind of shifted into my seat, and the whole truck kind of bounced a little. I'm thinking, well, I didn't jump up and down. And then I look over, and I see all the cars next to me are kind of doing this little wave going through, and then the antenna's spinning around, and it's like, oh, that's what's happening. The ground's moving. But yeah, it was so mild that I almost missed it. My dad said he was driving at the time and he didn't feel a thing. Yeah. He said he pulled into the gas station, and the gas station attendant's eyes were like big as, saucers, and said, did you feel that? My dad's like, feel what? Because yeah, it was so little that he didn't even notice it. And then, yeah, it's still like, what happened? And then the DJ came on the radio, like broke into the song and said, what the bleep? I think we just had an earthquake. I was like, oh, that's what that was. It was funny. After all the years of doing drills, I kind of almost missed it. Yeah, when we moved to the mainland of BC, we didn't really do earthquake drills as much. I was more prepared when I was in Vancouver Island. We had earthquake drills at least 3 times a year. Yeah. Sometimes they were scheduled, but there was always at least one that they wouldn't tell us. And the principal would come on the PA system and yell, earthquake, earthquake, and then we were all supposed to act as if, do the drill as if there really was one. So yeah, get under the tables, and then you have to count to 60 after it stops moving to account for the aftershocks before you come out and exit the building, because they said a lot of times the initial shaking is not what causes the most fatalities. It's after, when everybody thinks, oh good, it's done, and then there's a few more aftershocks and everything's already destabilized, and that's when ceilings cave in and stuff. So yeah, they tell you to wait, I think it was either 60 or 90 seconds, something like that, but it's been a while. Yeah, we left when I was like 15, so yeah, it's been quite a long time since I was in an earthquake drill. So yeah, and then we would go outside as if it was like same as a fire drill and meet in your designated spot so that they could account for everyone. Yeah, and we did those at least 3 times a year. And my husband, he's a few years older than me, and he says they remember doing air raid nuclear drills. And they kind of asked the teacher, it said like, okay, but how is hiding under our desks going to save us from a nuclear blast, right? Like, oh. Yeah, he said one of the teachers was kind of like, yeah, put your head between your knees and kiss your behind goodbye, because, yeah. It probably won't really do much. It'll make you feel like you're doing something, but yeah, it probably won't really help. Yeah, they still do fire drills, of course. Everybody does those, but yeah, earthquake drills, I had to tell my kid about them because, yeah, he had never experienced any. Oh, I remember too, our schools had our parents put together a little emergency kit to keep in the classrooms. And it was like, a letter or something from your parents, to reassure you, and some snacks and stuff like that. And you could also buy those emergency kind of like metal foily kind of blankets that are supposed to reflect your heat back to you. Anyway, some of the parents didn't understand the assignment, and they included perishable snacks. So yeah, by the end of the year when they gave it back, there was people who had like rotten bananas and stuff. And I was like, oh no. When they said snacks, they meant like granola bars, packages of crackers. Yeah, they did not mean fruit. I mean, I suppose dried fruit might be okay, but yeah. yeah. So anyways, changing the subject, I mentioned a few weeks back I got myself a new oven, and I think my old one must have run a little bit hotter than this one, because yeah, I've noticed a little bit of differences. Like, most stuff is the same. I made biscuits, they needed the same amount of time. I made cookies, and I made chocolate chip cookies. They were pretty much the same, but when I made double chocolate cookies, which is like chocolate batter with chocolate chips in it, I noticed that they were almost had like a crunchy outside rather than soft. So yeah, I think the next time I make them, I'm going to cook it for a minute less and see if that makes a difference. But the biggest one was I made cheesecake, and it did not set. So the time before that I made it, I messed up, because this recipe, you put in the cheesecake into like a 400-degree oven, and then after 10 minutes, you turn it down and cook it at like 200 degrees for like an hour. And I completely forgot about that second part. And so when I kept taking it, I'm like, why is it so browned? And then it was like, oh, you doofus, because you cooked it at like twice the heat, you know, it's supposed to be cooked at. So the next time I was very careful to make sure that I remembered to turn it down. And yeah, then the center didn't set. So I said, yeah, I tried to make cheesecake, and instead I made a kind of cream cheese pudding. So it still tasted good, but it was not what I had in mind. So I said I was glad that we didn't have guests over, because that would have been embarrassing. I've made cheesecake for years. I do know what I'm doing, but yeah, I've had the same oven for like 16, 17 years. So yeah, there are always sometimes variations. So yeah, and I've noticed when I'm cooking stuff at 450, it tends to take a couple minutes longer than my old oven for things to brown properly. So yeah, I think my old oven ran a little bit hot. Yeah, well, that was the big problem why I had to replace it, was the burners on the top quit. And so they still worked, but it was either on max or off, and there was no in between. So yeah, I remember I was cooking something and thinking, man, this is browning so fast, and I keep turning it down and it doesn't seem to make any difference. And then I look and I'm like, oh, the coil is still red hot when it's on like level 4 out of 10. That's not right. And then yeah, I realized it was no longer had any control. It was all or nothing. Yeah. So, and that was when I said, yeah, because we had the old one since we moved in 2006, and it was not new then. I have no idea how old it is, but I think it was pretty old. It might even have been original to the house, which was like built in 73. So I'm not sure, but yeah. Yeah, the fridge finally died in 2020. And again, it wasn't new. But yeah, I went one day, my kiddo asked for some frozen yogurt, and when I went to scoop it out, I pushed on the scoop, you know, hard, like you're supposed to, and it just kind of like cut through it like a hot knife through butter. It was like, oh, I think this freezer's not working very well anymore. Okay, time to replace it. So yeah, my husband still had this little, you know, cube fridge from when he was in the military and he was living in the barracks, and they didn't have a kitchenette. So in your room, you were allowed to have, like, he had a little microwave and just a little, you know, like beverage fridge just to keep, you know, some cheese and stuff in. And yeah, so fortunately we have a chest freezer downstairs, so I was able to put things in that. And then yeah, so nothing defrosted and went bad, fortunately. But yeah, and then we had to order a new one. So I'm hoping that's the last we'll have to replace appliances for a little while. Because yeah, in the last few years we had to replace the fridge, now the stove, the bathtub. We had to redo the bathroom. The bathtub, actually, my son put a hole in it with his knee. Yeah, he was getting out one night and he slipped, and yeah. And it was really old. Like I said, sometimes when I was scrubbing it, you could almost hear it almost crackling. So we knew that, yeah, it was pretty brittle, and it was on its last legs. So, yeah. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it was original to the house because it was really tough getting it out of the space. Yeah, like my husband had to take the door frame off, and even then, we barely got the new tub through. And so, yeah, he suspects that... Oh, I went too far over. It should be here. Yeah, there we go. And he suspects that, yeah, they brought in the tub and then built the door and stuff afterwards, built around it. So... But yeah, we replaced that. We've had to replace the water heater twice since we moved in. That's 19 years ago this summer. I can always remember because, yeah, I was pregnant with kiddo when we moved in, so it's always a year older than he is. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I kind of did this edge along here. Yeah, I was about 6 weeks along when we moved. I felt so bad because I was very ill and I couldn't do the cleaning of the old house. My husband had to do all of it, and which he did without complaint, yeah. But, yeah, I felt bad because I was just, like, lying on the bed with a bucket next to me, like, ugh. Yeah, and we had to replace the roof since we moved in here. We had to do that when kiddo was about 2. Yeah, it wasn't leaking yet, but it was getting close. So, and again, I think it was original to the house. So, yeah, it was like 40 years old almost when we moved in. So, yeah, and then we had to replace the windows too a few years ago. They were single pane and they were terrible. Yeah. The worst was that because they were so thin, we would get ice build up on the inside when it was cold. Like when it was minus 40, sometimes you get like a couple inches in the corners and then they melt and it causes water damage, right? And I try to keep up with it with towels and stuff, but yeah, there's only so much you can do. And we were lucky. There was one spot that was pretty bad in the living room, and we were kind of worried that when we were replacing the windows that it was going to be really rotted, but thankfully it seems that only the drywall was, yeah, somewhat affected, and that was pretty easy to patch. The actual, like, wood studs beneath it were okay. So, phew, yeah, 'cause water damage is a nightmare. You definitely don't want to deal with that, because then sometimes you end up with mold damage too, and that's, yeah, definitely not good. Yeah, so once again, this part of the pattern stitches up fairly dark. On the mock-up, it looks more white, light gray, but there's actually purples and pinks and stuff in there. So it keeps things interesting. Yeah, so for the moment, I'm probably going to cut this off here and here, kind of do this triangle shape, and then I'll move further down here and carry on. But yeah, I passed 71%, so woohoo! I may get to 72 by the end of May. We will see. Yeah, I have about another 3,000 stitches to reach my $8,000 stitch, can't talk, 8,000 stitch average that I reach per month. So yeah, I am on track to do that. So yeah, I manage about 100,000 stitches on this main piece per year. Right, and I planned ahead that I will just use a small piece for these ones right here in this corner. Yeah, $8,000. Sure, I wish I could make that much a month. That'd be nice. Yeah, so up higher on the peahen's belly, there was a little bit of white, but very little. Yeah, you would expect these feathers to be mostly white, but there was actually very little. Even the palest parts was very light grays. Okay. Perfect. Yeah, I said often cross stitch does seem to stitch up a little bit darker than the original artwork. And that's been my experience across multiple designers too, so. Yeah, not always, but that has been my experience. Rarely does it turn up lighter than the than the original artwork. It's either the same if they manage it or darker. Okay, so I'm just going to take a look at this one here. I don't think, no, it's not long. That's what I thought. So I'm going to start a brand new one. Yeah, because that one up there is pretty much only big enough for the one stitch. Oh dear. There we go. Yeah, so I will probably curve this out a bit and then kind of divide this brown sort of in the middle there. And then, yeah, I'll move the whole thing and keep working. Because, yeah, kind of, like I said, curves back and forth like that. So, yeah, my stitching will probably follow, but I don't like to go too far across. Yeah, horizontally when there's a whole bunch of empty above it. That does close it in. Sometimes I do, but generally no. Generally I sort of work the curve until it's too close to the horizontal, and then I start working from the top down and meet it. That is a knot. There we go. Oops. There we are. These two. That'll be it for this color. Or for this thread, I should say. Yeah, so the whole thing kind of forms a wedge out to that way, but the stripes, yeah, the color kind of stripes that way within it. So that's getting kind of twisty, so when I pull it to the bottom, I drop the needle and just let it unwind a little, and that helps, yeah, remove some of the twist there. So yeah, I could sort of leave this one for the next section, but it's already threaded, so I think I will just do these 2 stitches here with it, and then I think I will tie that off. Then, like I said, yeah, kind of splitting it in a... I don't do straight lines generally. Actually, I might be able to do another one sort of right there. So we'll see. Okay, so I got 2 threads, one parked at the top, one is along here. Yeah, unfortunately, it seems like it's almost looking more smoky out there now than when I started stitching. Yeah, like I said, I hope that rain they promised us shows up. That will help. As long as it isn't a thunderstorm, because, yeah, unfortunately, a lot of times that is how our wildfires start, is from lightning strikes. So, we want the rain without the thunder and lightning, please. Yeah, it was funny. My son, when he was really little, like 2, he thought the thunder was really cool. He'd stand there at the window watching the storm and growl at the thunder. And then when he got a little older, it was like 6 or 7, he got afraid of it for a while. Yeah. Which I think I was too at that age, yeah. But yeah, I kind of grew out of it, but I know for some people, yeah, it's a phobia that does not go away. Yeah, when we were kids for a while, we had 2 dogs, and I remember there was a thunderstorm. My sister's dog was absolutely terrified. Yeah. And my dog did not care. Yeah, she kind of barked back at the thunder a couple times, and I remember I opened the door to let them come in, and right at that moment there was a big thunderclap, and my sister's dog almost knocked me over, running inside, and my dog kind of just stood there on the back porch kind of looking at the sky like, oh, what was that? Yeah. I don't know if it was certain breeds or just certain individual dogs. My dog was a chocolate lab, and my sister's was pretty sure she was some kind of sheepdog mix because she had that coloring. And yeah, unfortunately, we think we adopted them from the SPCA, and I think that was probably why my sister's dog was very destructive. Was we didn't understand that at the time, but she was likely a working breed, and yeah, you can't just keep them as family pets. You need to basically wear them out, right? They need to have lots of physical stuff to do, or they get bored and then they start wrecking things. Yeah, which at the time we didn't know, because yeah, my dog is a lab. They can be used for hunting and stuff, but they're quite content to just sort of, yeah, play a bit, lie around, take a nap. But yeah, my sister's dog was always very, very active, and yeah, she somehow managed to tear a hole in the linoleum floor because we had the back porch and a dog run in the backyard, and then they were in the laundry room because it was lino there, so that way, yeah, my mom didn't want them in the house proper, but they were allowed in the laundry room. And yeah, she managed to tear a hole in the lino floor and like in the center of the floor. Like there was no seam there or anything for her to like pick at and get. I don't know how she got it started, but yeah, she tore a hole right in the middle of it. And I remember that night we were eating dinner and my dog kept barking, and she's not much of a barker. You know, we're going, what's the problem? Walked in it. Oh, that's why she was trying to warn us that, hey, my buddy's doing something she shouldn't be, you know. Yeah, my dad was not happy. He said, I'm gonna cover that floor with your hide. And then a few weeks later, she was lying down on top of the hole she made. My dad said, see, I told you I was gonna cover it with your hide. But yeah, she got into my dad's vegetable garden and dug it all up, and yeah, she dug holes under the fence, and yeah, she ran away once and came back after 3 days. But yeah, like I said, we didn't understand the difference back then between, yeah, breeds. And yeah, you might think like a high intensity dog would be fun, but yeah, you have to actually be realistic. And are you willing to do the work, put in the work that they need to be content? Yeah. Which is why I do not have one now. I like dogs, but I'm too lazy to put in that much work. Yeah. We currently don't have any pets. We had a guinea pig for a while. Yeah. We had her for like 8 years, which is a really long time for them to live. And she wasn't a baby when we got her. So yeah, we suspect she was around 9, and they generally live 6 to 8 years. So yeah, she was really old. And I wouldn't mind having guinea pigs again, but I don't know. My heart's not really in it. Yeah. It was like 2 years ago that she passed away, and I know. I'm just like, I don't feel like having my heart broken again, so I don't know. Maybe when I'm feeling empty nest syndrome, I might. But yeah, I have to say, I do kind of like when you don't have pets, it's much easier to spontaneously go somewhere for, you know, a weekend or a few days. You don't have to worry about making sure there's someone around to feed them and clean their cages and all that. Yeah. So. Yeah, one of my friends, we used to have her. She would take them, we would bring them over to her house. But then, yeah, she got a couple of dogs, and she just said, you know, I don't, and they have pretty much the run of the house. So like, yeah, she says, even though they're in cages, I would worry. Yeah, which I understand. Yeah. Like I said, when we got our guinea pig, we were not intending to get a pet. It was somebody abandoned her in a parking lot, And my sister-in-law was renting a room from us at the time. She worked there at the pet store where Buster was abandoned, and she was trying to find some home for her, and somebody was going to take her, and then they changed their minds and it fell through. And she said, well, I really don't want to leave her over the weekend at the store. You know, I guess there's other people there, but she didn't necessarily trust anyone else to watch her. So she said, can I bring her to your place temporarily? Well, we all know how that worked out, right? So, yeah. Yeah, she came temporarily till she could find a foster family and never left. So, yeah. Yeah, because she already had one guinea pig that came out with her because she came from BC and she stayed with us for about a year while she was getting on her feet. And she had her own guinea pig, and so she was trying to put them together, but unfortunately they were both kind of dominant. And so, yeah, one took a nip at the other, and that was it. Neither of them was backing down. So, yeah, we had to have them in separate cages. They were happy talking to each other from separate cages, but yeah, we could not generally put them together or they'd start fighting. So, yeah, generally, they say guinea pigs need a buddy. They're social creatures. So usually you will get like 2 litter mates of the, right, 2 boys or 2 girls who, you know, were birthed and grew up together, because then, yeah. And, but yeah, our guinea pig was a loner. She didn't care. We would take her over to a friend's house who had some other piggies to let them play together. But yeah, she didn't mind. She was quite content on her own. Now, like I said, she lived for a long time, so yeah. Because I remember that was how my sister-in-law got another of her piggies. Was at the store they had 3 brothers, and someone took 2 of them and they left the one guy, and the poor guy left behind was so depressed. He stopped eating, and she had a male that she had brought. He was the runt and nobody wanted him, and she hand-fed him, and you would never know. Yeah, a few weeks after she had him, he was so healthy, because at first when she had him, she thought he was what they call the werewolf skinny pig, which is where they have just patches of fur, because the skinny pigs are the ones that basically don't have fur. And yeah, the hairless ones. And so she thought that's what he was, but no, she said she thinks his fur was patchy from the other piggies picking on him and like biting out patches of his fur. Poor little guy. Because yeah, like I said, she hand fed him, and yeah, you would never have known after she took care of him, because his fur grew in all thick and glossy, and yeah, you would never have known he was a runt. He was just gorgeous. Yeah. And so anyway, she had him, and then yeah, there was the other one where the people bought his brothers and not him, and so this other guy was depressed, and so she brought him home for them to be litter mates. But again, they got on at first, but yeah, they started fighting, so same thing, they needed separate cages near each other. So yeah, for a while we had 4 piggies in our house. And then the original one that she came with, she was older, so she passed away. And then yeah, my sister-in-law moved to her own place and took the other piggies with her, the other 2 boys, and so we were left behind with Buster, who was actually called Miss Buster, because yeah, we were thinking of a name, and I said, well, how about Buster, because the police caught her, so we were joking she was busted by the cops. And my sister said, we can't call her that, it's a boy's name. So it was a total joke. I said, well, we could call her Miss Buster, and he liked it, and that's what stuck. So yeah, she was Miss Buster. Although I often just called her Buster. Yeah. So yeah, I think, yeah, this is sort of where I'm going to let the colors kind of drift off. I will do a stitch as long as it is connected on one side to previous stitches. And then, yeah, tie this off. And yeah, just continue filling in to the bottom there. Yeah, I don't like it when it's this dark. It's harder to stitch, I find. Harder to see what I'm doing. There. Even with my crafting lamp on, it's just not as good. All right, so yeah, that wasn't even threaded, so no problem. So yeah, the peahen's belly kind of ends about here, so yeah, I would say getting her done this month is probably doable. We're pretty close to it. Yeah, so I will probably cut off right about here for now. Finish filling that in and then, yeah, carry on. But probably not doing that today, yeah. Coming on to an hour, so. I think, yeah, actually I'll do one more. Might as well. Oops. Oh, rats. Yeah. I hate when that happens. Ah, good. Luckily, I was able to pop that knot open. Now coming on to 200, so maybe I will stitch to that and then take a break from there. Yeah. There were more colors in this area, so I didn't think that I would get that many done, but I think, yeah, because they were kind of in stripes, that meant I didn't have to change colors as much, so that kind of helped. Let's speed things along a bit. Okay. Well, that'll work out just right. I'll do these 3 and park it, and it will be exactly 200. Perfect, 200. Nice. So thank you so much for joining me today, and hope to see you here next time. Thanks, everyone.